Hi, I'll continue with paragraph 28 from the chapter on the brace in Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art, das Klavier zu spielen. Dieser prallende Doppelschlag findet sich ohne und nach einem Vorschlage. Niemals aber kann anders vorkommen als der Pralltriller, nämlich nach einer fallenden Sekunde, von welcher gleichsam abgezogen wird. Figur 63 und 64. Da diese zusammengesetzte Manier mehr Noten enthält als die einfachen Manieren, woraus sie besteht, so füllt sie auch die Geltung einer etwas langen Note besser aus. Folglich wird sie auch in diesem Falle lieber gebraucht als der Pralltriller allein. Figur 65. Hingegen tut der Pralltriller allein bei dem mit Stern markierten Exempel in Allegretto und in einer noch hurtigeren Zeitmaße besser als zusammengesetzt. Man kann überhaupt merken, dass sowohl der einfache als prallende Doppelschlag an den Stellen selten gut tut, wo ein Triller ohne Nachschlag statt hat. So, Bach says the glancing brace is found without and after an appoggiatura, and that it can't ever occur differently than the pralltrill. In the examples 63 and 64, we can see where the double sign of this compound ornament is situated. And we can see in other examples for the pralltrill alone that its sign is similarly situated, and which is over a note that has descended a step from the preceding note. So you can see that. We can compare figure 48 from the chapter on trills and figure 64. The situation or the context in which the respective ornaments appear is fundamentally the same. The difference has been pointed out by Bach in this paragraph, by the way. So you'll have just heard it, and I'll discuss it again in the course of the video. Then Bach goes into greater detail, just like he did in paragraph 27 when he mentioned the scharfes Schnellen. He shifts his focus away from the pralltrill and returns it exclusively onto the glancing brace, which is something different to the pralltrill. So he zooms in on the glancing brace and says that there where the glancing brace occurs is after a falling second. And when Bach says that, he's expecting us to use our brains. He's expecting us to take him seriously, to as well focus in on it. The G is the falling second in figure 63, not the A. And if you could just accept that for now, I'll go into it a bit more later. So the G is the falling second in figure 63. One can look at the G in the first part of figure 63 with its decorations, and then the first G in the written out execution next to it, and understand that they are both descending or falling seconds, whereas none of the A's are falling seconds. Bach says that the glancing brace comes after the falling second. So, if we want to give Bach the credit of the doubt and think that he is or was in a position where he was able to say what he wanted to say when he talked about music, we can look at that descending second in the written out execution and see what comes after it. So we are not looking at what comes after the A's, we are looking at what comes after the G, because the G is the fallende sekunde. And what do we see coming after the G? We see the notes of a brace which in paragraph 5 from the chapter on the brace, Bach says occurs either directly over a note or after it, a little to the right hand side of it. Der Doppelschlag allein kommt entweder gerade über einer Note oder nach selbiger etwas zur rechten Hand vor. And if it is indeed a brace we are looking at, after the G, we could then wonder what sort of brace could it be? And we could think why, in that context, it could be a glancing brace, a prallende Doppelschlag. And you'll have to excuse the tone if it sounds condescending. It's not directed at you, it's directed at Bärenreiter. And I'll soon be showing why. So, we could think why it could be a prallende Doppelschlag. And what would we then notice? We would notice that, unlike the prall trill, which comes before the note to which it's attached, and in that figure 45, that note is an F, and that F is tied to the last note of the prall trill. The glancing brace comes after the note, which in figure 63 is a G, after which comes the brace. So we would notice like that, unlike the prall trill which comes before the note to which it's attached, the glancing brace comes after the note. And that the notes in those two cases, coming after with the prall trill and coming before with the glancing brace, are falling seconds. So the note the prall trill comes before, the F, is a falling second, and the note the glancing brace comes after, the G, is as well a falling second. And what does Bach have to say about the glancing brace, that prallende Doppelschlag? He says that the glancing brace is drawn off, so to speak, from the falling second. He is giving us a hint as to how to structure the compound ornament in our minds as we play it, i.e. how one who has mastered the glancing brace structures it in their mind. I have noticed Bach being careful in how he distinguishes this ornament. In the previous paragraph, he never once calls it a prallende Doppelschlag. So that's paragraph 27. He only refers to it as a zusammengesetzte Manier, a compound ornament. And in this paragraph 28, after calling it a prallende Doppelschlag in the first sentence, in the next he immediately goes back to referring to it as a zusammengesetzte Manier. He is being specific. For the purposes of instruction and accuracy, he is careful and deliberate with this distinction he makes. I see the glancing brace as being ultimately the name for the kind of brace that is coupled with the prall trill to create this compound ornament, as opposed to a brace that stands alone. And once I did, I could understand what Bach is saying on a whole different level. I could feel closer to him, in his brain, so to speak. Ooh. Sorry. I could say, I took him out of the past and put him in the present. But it is us and the roll of honour who are in the past. So I took myself out of the past and put myself into his present. But his present is our future. So we are in the past looking at the future. That makes sense. The glancing brace in figure 63, so the brace part of the compound ornament is drawn off the G. That's what Bach is giving those of us, the meek, the humble, who take the care to take him seriously. An approach or a state of mind that, together with AC finger position and AC fingering, the solution to fingering, allows you to securely execute the ornament with consistent proficiency. But not only, the approach is also going to take away your fear of the ornament. That fear that belongs to the cage, where one relies on one's muscles to do the thinking. What muscles they are exactly, the roll of honour don't know. They rely on the muscles themselves, being clever enough to figure that one out. Let the muscles do the thinking. That's their motto. What we get is extra help in how to master this ornament. Combined with the hastening, and that which tells us when to initiate the brace, we can think of this ornament as being first 2 notes and then a brace. The brace is drawn off the G. And I can demonstrate what that might mean by ignoring the time values of the notes of the compound ornament, where I play an A and a G, and then I draw the brace from the G. That could be the key as to how to understand it or picture it in order to be able to perform it with a consistent standard. I say could because I can't speak for others, but speaking for myself, I say it does. Plus, by Bach putting me in charge and not my muscles, it allows me to work around the deficiencies of the piano. When the keys are slow or unresponsive, I can adjust the speed of the first 2 notes accordingly, for example, as a way around it. It's not ideal. It can still make you angry. But a bad piano is not going to have as big a hold over you and as big a hold over what you can do as it once might have had. So on this, the G is disproportionately loud, so I can't get the volume exactly right, because it just, the piano, when the notes in themselves are disproportionately loud, there's no way around that. And the F is weak. That F, the one below it, an octave lower, is way too loud as well. No matter, it just sticks out. And the tone at the B above middle C is as well. That's a weak tone. Causes problems and affects the speed at which I can play. When it's when the tone is weak, it doesn't speak. It's swallowed up quicker. So if the key is not slow, well then it can be the weak tone that prevents me from, if I want it to be heard. And the middle C, the dampers aren't aligned properly, so it continues to sound. That can be heard in the last piece I uploaded, that C. There's nothing I can do about it, and I said it and it wasn't couldn't be fixed. So, yeah, so incidentally, with AC finger position, and I introduced that in episode 2 of the episode videos, and that's titled Finger Position and a Key Characteristic of Virtuosity. And there as well, I also talk about the virtuosity paradox. So if you don't know what the virtuosity paradox is, you could find out in that video. With AC finger position, and I call it AC, I didn't call it AC finger in position in the video, but I do call it now AC finger position because I discovered it myself, nobody told it to me, and it differs from all other schools of thought regarding finger position. So with AC finger position, you can immediately improve or hone the quality of your attack. It will work like focusing a telescope. Just as the sharpness of the image you are looking at through a telescope changes as you adjust the lens, so too does the speed of your attack as you adjust your finger position. Like I explained in that video, and what distinguishes AC finger position from all other schools of thought regarding finger position, one's attack of the keys can be either too slow or too fast. A finger that is not properly curved will press a white key too slowly, resulting in a slow note. Whereas a finger with a white key curve, a finger that isn't flat, will press a black key too quickly, shortening its tone. AC finger position encompasses that yin and yang, whereas other schools don't. They have the one-size-fits-all mentality. So they tell you one finger position and that's it. That's what you're meant to use, even though the black and white keys are on a different level. Makes sense that each needs a different finger position. But the Roll of Honor don't have such sense. So, and yeah, so because you can play, so they'll use the curved key or the curved finger on a black key, and they play those, all their black keys they play too fast. The tone is too short. And that is why Lilliput's Roll of Honor rush when playing Beethoven. Why what one is looking at when they look at the Roll of Honor is a headless chicken race, where the achievement is that they get to the end without tripping, either up on a wrong note or because they're generally running faster than their legs can carry them. That, incidentally, is what has replaced interpretation. And they might be champions, the leaders of the headless chicken division, but they're still headless chickens. They're still empty-headed. And I would say it's possible that some of the top of the Roll of Honor, that they will realize the difficulty in Beethoven is not the speed. You know, what it'll set the, you know, they'll know that every music student and every like YouTube star, or, you know, they'll recognize that most people, that speed is not the achievement with Beethoven. The difficulty is being able to control the speed for it to be measured. And because they'll realize, they'll have heard, or through their years, their ideal will be, they'll know the speed. The voice of Beethoven doesn't come out with the speed. And the crucial elements of Beethoven don't come out when all the passages have been rushed through with speed. And that, yeah, so they'll know that difficulty. Yeah, so that'll help together with, what the clue that Bach is giving you. He's mastered the glancing brace, and he is telling you how to structure it. Bach is being specific. Namely means being specific. In the cage where Lilliput's roll of honour preside, in which they want to suck as many people as they can, such specificness or specificity doesn't exist. So anything of the like is greeted with confusion, is understood as a mistake, and thus eradicated. That insight into being able to play this compound ornament is lost as a result. It is denied to you as a result. The value of what Bach says is lost. You'll all go away thinking this book's not that great. That's because its greatness does not exist in the cage. You'll think cage activity is a lot more advanced than all that. And if Bach would have known about it, he'd have been rather talking about that. And he'd sound like the roll of honour, and it'd be better in your ears than in your eyes. If Bach forgot about this, what he's talking about, and instead said to break up a difficult passage into rhythms, turn it into a dotted rhythm, you'd all love that. Or not you, I'm saying people out there, the people who subscribe and watch and adore Lilliput's roll of honour. They love that. They think this is great, and they think he doesn't say that because he wasn't advanced enough at that stage to know such great things. And the funny thing is, none of them are able to play a dotted rhythm. And their professors aren't able to play a dotted rhythm. Their professors aren't able to tell them what a dotted rhythm is. And so they're trying to learn something that they can't do by doing something else that they can't do. I remember, I was in a lesson with the Opus 10 number 4, and I got the hint or the tip, try it in a dotted rhythm. The end bit, because I messed up a bit at that last bit of that etude, and I played it in a dotted rhythm, and it was something like the professor had never heard before. And yeah, and the thing is, with the the AC finger position, if you try that, what you'll be doing is this is the way out of the cage. And when you try it at the start, it's going to feel wrong. Even though, like I said, it's like the effect on a telescope, you can immediately change your attack. But the thing is, you do not know these attacks. You know what's in the cage, what stuff feels like in the cage. And so this is going to feel wrong. It's going to be diametrically opposed to what your brain tells you is correct, because it's been conditioned by the cage. If you're fed soup in the cage, you're cage soup, you're going to think that's what soup tastes like. And then when you taste real soup, the real soup is going to, you're going to immediately it's going to taste wrong. And the thing is, that's not because you're not feeling the effect of AC fingering and AC finger position. The thing is, you're not noticing the effect. It's just too strange. So you need to, it's like Kierkegaard said about behaving properly in the face of possibility. When you try the finger position I share in that video, you are confronted by possibility. And you have to, behaving properly will mean not kind of pushing it away and saying, I don't like that, and retreating back into the cage. You allow it to happen, and you allow things to happen that you're not in control of, that you can't anticipate, that your brain can't wrap itself around. And over time, you'll start to notice the qualities that were there right away, but you just weren't in a position to be able to notice them. So it'll work immediately. As soon as you do it right, you might as well have been doing it for 20 years. And when you play, that's the key, with the right speed, in the right way, you're going to play it immediately as good as the best piano player in the world can do it. So you need to give it a chance, basically. Don't be too quick to push it away and retreat back into the cage, because everything in the cage is the exact opposite of how it should be. So so you can imagine the feeling if you're upside down and turned up the right way round. The right way round is going to feel upside down to you, but you'll gain strength quickly when you're doing it right. Yeah. So one can get that from it. A veritable feast, fish for a lifetime. Or one could take from it what Bärenreiter took from it, that Bach wasn't able to properly use the words before and after. What follows is an example of mediocrity attacking and eradicating genius. We can see what's then left for the cage, the leftover scraps they feed you, why nothing exists in the cage bar cage activity, why everyone in the cage is malnourished and weak. Because without that insight, all you will have for sustenance is your metronome, etc., your finger exercises. You're breaking it up into rhythms. Your compendious education that tells you how to train your muscles so they can do the thinking. And if you step back and just look at it objectively, and look at the things your professors are telling you to do and these YouTube piano people are telling you to do, and it has nothing to do with using your brain. And then maybe you can and when you see that that is actually the case, you can maybe think of the absurdity of that. It's all about how to train the muscles. Regardless, talking about memory, their greatest, thing they have with regard to memory, the one they actually rely on most is muscle memory. Bach is telling you how you can use your brain, and the role of honor. Your professors will compensate. They'll know that what they provide has nothing to do with the brain, and so they'll tell you, they'll admonish you, because with them it all depends on you. If it fails, it's not because they gave you the wrong advice, or because they don't have a clue what the right answer actually is. You'll get it wrong because you weren't disciplined enough. You didn't do enough slow practice. You played it too fast too often. There'll be many reasons why you failed to become a virtuoso, and none of them will be because they haven't got a clue, whereas that's the only correct answer to why you failed. I mean, there's other reasons why. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like here, I'm providing the right answer, but do you think people are flocking to it? No. They're flocking to the same old stuff all the time. But they compensate. They know they're not telling you to use your brain. They're not giving you anything that you can, engage your brain with. So they tell you, they give a warning that when you do all their cage activity, not to switch the brain off, to be active, to do it musically and all. But they're not telling you how to use your brain. It's just mindless repetition, but use your mind. for the mindless repetition. You're relying on your muscles, but use your mind while you rely on your muscles, while you hope your muscles do the thinking, while you hope your muscles remember what you're doing. So they tell you to do it. So if, when the mind goes blank, it's not you, they told you to use your mind, but they didn't. They didn't give you a way to use it. And that's they know they're not doing that, so they tell you as if that covers it. And then they'll tell you to listen while you're doing it. But the first question one asks, if I say to you, do you hear that? The first thing you'll say in response is, hear what? So when they say listen, you can say listen to what? And they won't have an answer. They'll just go into generalizations. Oh, the sound or the quality of sound. They'll have nothing. They won't tell you. They'll have no specifics of what you have to listen for. They just say listen in general. So you could step back and think, yeah, it's absurd, but it's very hard to see the level at how it is until you hear something or see something that's better. It's like with playing. It's very hard to tell how can that piece sound better when you only hear the one person. But if you hear somebody else playing it in a better way, you can think, oh yeah, that sounds, then you know. But without the comparison, it can be very hard to know. But it is, if you step back, it's absurd what they're doing. Because they are victims themselves. They haven't got a clue. They are just scared you find out. They're found out because they're phonies. They're frightened to death. When I walked in the college, when I was studying, I could taste the fear in the halls. They're all scared because they all know they're frauds. They all know they haven't got a clue. And they're afraid you'll find out. That's why you'll never find a professor recommending me to anybody. They'll hope I go away and shut up because I'll expose a lot of them. So, yeah, and a compendious education. What's a compendious education? And a compendious is like, listing off. So those with a compendious education could prattle off the definition of tempo rubato, for example. But far from ever recognizing it, if they were to witness somebody doing it, they'd scream mistake. Tempo rubato does not exist in the cage. It does not exist with the roll of honor. A compendious education means neither knowing nor being able to recognize any of those things for which definitions have been memorized, because none of those things exist in the cage. How are they going to know them if they don't exist? In their foreword, their introduction to this book, so this one, written by Wolfgang Horn, Bärenreiter says, Bach konnte mit Recht stolz darauf sein, dass sowohl der Text als auch die Noten in seinen beiden Versuchen nahezu fehlerfrei waren. Lediglich eine Stelle ist uns aufgefallen, die inhaltlich problematisch ist. Den Prall-Triller lokalisiert Bach zunächst vor einer fallenden Sekunde. And that was 1753, page 83, paragraph 34. And they have this in brackets. And they say, Wortlauf in allen Auflagen gleich, and close brackets. So that means wording in all editions are the same. Because if anyone knows the text, Bärenreiter knows the text. In Wahrheit sitzt aber auf der zweiten Note, mithin nach einer fallenden Sekunde. And then they have in brackets, Vergleich in diesem Sinne dann Bachs Formulierungen. So compare in this sense then Bach's formulations. 1753, page 93, paragraph 28, and that's the one we're on now. and then page 96, paragraph 34. And that's paragraph 34, the same chapter on the brace. And then page 102, paragraph 14, and that's from the chapter on the mordants. And then they say, deshalb sollte man auch an der ersten Stelle nachlesen. So Bach could be justifiably proud that the text as well as the notation in both his essays were practically faultless. Says who? Says them. We only noticed one spot that is problematic with regard to its content. Now they are making an admission about themselves and not about Bach not making the grade. We only noticed one spot. That is the subject or the theme of that sentence. Not the spot that's problematic. It's we only noticed. To begin with, Bach localizes the pral trill before a falling second. In reality, however, it is sitting on the second note, the F, thus after a descending second. So according to Bärenreiter, the G is the descending second and not the F. Therefore, they say, one should also read after in the first instance. So, since according to Bärenreiter the G is the descending second and not the F, well then they think obviously the pral trill is coming after the descending second. So, i.e., Bach wasn't able to use the words before and after properly. And here's the bit that Bärenreiter claims needs correcting. And this is paragraph 34 from the chapter on trills. Dieser Pralltriller kann nicht anders als vor einer fallenden Sekunde vorkommen. Sie mag nun durch einen Vorschlag oder eine große Note entstehen. Figur 47. The falling or descending second in figure 47 is the F. Bärenreiter, without the slightest hint of doubt, claim it to be the G by saying the pral trill is sitting on the second note, thus after a descending second. They think the G is the descending second. Even though Bach, in the same sentence, tells us what creates the falling second. An appoggiatura or a big note creates the falling second. And in that sentence, pral triller is masculine and the fallende sekunde is feminine. So the C in the second half of the sentence refers to the falling second. In the case of figure 47, it is the G, a big note, that creates the falling second. The F is the falling second because of the G. In the case of 63, it is the A, an appoggiatura, that creates the descending second. The G is a descending second because of that A appoggiatura. So sie mag nun durch einen Vorschlag oder eine große Note entstehen. The descending second. So when I disagree with Bärenreiter and say the G in figure 47 is not the falling second, you might then ask me, what is that G, the first note, if it is not a descending second? The first thing I'd say is, I'd ask, is the G in the act of descending? Is it not the F that is going downwards, that is actually descending? Figuratively speaking, the G is standing at the top of the stairs, whereas the F is on the stairs going down them. The G is at the top of the stairs and the F is on the stairs going down them. The F is descending. Is it not the previous note that determines the following note? Is the G a repeated note? I can't say. I'd have to know what note comes before the G to be able to tell you that. If the note before it is a G, then yes, it is a repeated note. If it isn't, then no. Knowing what note follows the G doesn't help. Is the G an upward leaping note? Again, I'd need to know what note came before to be able to answer, to be able to tell what the note itself is actually doing. So, if the note following is the one actually descending, like the F is doing in figure 47, then, according to Bärenreiter, it's not the F that's descending, but rather the G before it, even though we don't know what the G is actually doing. We don't know if it's a repeated note, if it's an upward leaping fifth or sixth, if it is leaping downwards, rising a step, falling a step. We don't know, because we don't know what, if anything, came before the G. The F is a second because of the G, and it is descending because of the G. The F is the descending second. If we look at figure 65 with the star, according to Bärenreiter's understanding, the C in the right hand of the first beat of the bar must be a falling second and not a repeated note. I'd call it a repeated note, and I'd say that a repeated note can't at the same time be a falling second. Bärenreiter would probably argue that it can, without any clue as to the extent to which their logic fails. With Bärenreiter you'll get lots of instances where some notes are two things, while other notes are nothing. Bärenreiter would also call the second right hand D of that bar, in the third beat, a falling second. And they'd be saying the glancing braces are coming after those falling seconds. They'd look at figures 63 and 64 and tell you they're examples of the glancing brace coming in after a falling second. And as they do that, I'll bet they wouldn't be wondering why Bach gives an extra example just to show that, when nothing he's done has been superfluous. Ask them why Bach does that and they wouldn't be able to tell you, because if they don't know it, it doesn't exist. And they only know what exists in the cage, where nothing exists bar cage activity, i.e. fabrications. They won't tell you that in figures 63 and 64, it's Bach giving an example of the brace, of the glancing brace occurring, as he says in the text, after an appoggiatura in figure 63, and without an appoggiatura in figure 64. The left hand bit of 64 is there to show that that note over which the two signs of the compound ornament, that is not an appoggiatura. But that's what those two examples are showing. And the B following the C, even though it is in the act of descending a second, it wouldn't be a descending second for Bärenreiter. For Bärenreiter, if their logic was to remain consistent, and consistency doesn't exist in the cage, at least not a good or deliberate kind of consistency. Their consistency is the eradicating of genius. That's the consistency they possess in the cage. So if their logic was to remain consistent, that B would have to be an upward leaping third. Bärenreiter thinks the note that follows makes it so. Look at the B. Does that look like an upward leaping third to you? They'd say that, even though it's the D that is in the act of leaping up a third. And that same D, using Bärenreiter's logic, would be a repeated note, even though it is the D after that that is repeating its preceding note. Remember, I said if Bärenreiter were to remain consistent, they'd change it because they don't have consistency, so they changed it. They'd say, oh no, it's not, oh, they deny all that. But that they'd have to be saying that if they were to be consistent and if they were to apply that logic they are using. When they try to convince you that Bach wasn't able to use the words before and after, and that they're in a better position to tell you what Bach meant than he was. Bärenreiter's whole argument, Bärenreiter's postulate, is a fundamental misunderstanding, an error, before we look at what else they missed. And they want to intercept you and lead you up that path right into their cage, force their fabrications onto you. Incidentally, the Bärenreiter that said Bach could be justifiably proud that the text as well as the notation in both his essays were practically faultless, they notate that figure 65 with the star example incorrectly. As well as the notation was practically faultless, that's what they said. That's in their great opinion after they looked. That's what they concluded. They notate the figure 65 with the star incorrectly. That's bad timing. Bach wrote in signs for the prallende alone, and not the compound ornament, which better matches his text. He said the prallende in the example with the star in allegretto and in an even brisker tempo does better alone than combined. His signs indicate this. Again, evidence of the care and thought Bach put into his text and notation when one compares it to the performance Bärenreiter delivers with their one-size-fits-all mentality. You can see how pathetic that is. They don't just mess up the notation, the text. They mess up the text in that the text relates specifically to why the design for that example is not the compound ornament but the prallende alone. So it shows that they messed up on two levels, on the text level and on the notation level. One thing would be just simply having the ability to see something and copying it out exactly as they see it. Bärenreiter make another error in their notating of an example that accompanies the next paragraph, paragraph 29. And the error Bärenreiter made there is going to again show they're complete. And in light of all this, of what they say in their introduction, practically laughable obliviousness to the text. So where was I? Oh yes, Bärenreiter was telling you how you are meant to understand the text. This is the roll of honour. In the appendix to paragraph 34 from the chapter on the brace, Bach unambiguously identifies the second note of the first example as an ascending second, saying over instead of before and after. Which is good because before and after it's a bit too complicated for those at the level of Bärenreiter. So that he says over should help them. Diese Manier kann auch bei geschleiften Noten über der steigenden Sekunde angebracht werden. Zum Exempel. So the note in question is a D, and because of the soprano clef, and I didn't explain that before. Probably there's no need because you can look it up, but you see those two curved lines on on that clef, and whatever line is on, between the two curved lines, so like the money shot, whatever, that's middle C. So that, you'll find that on different lines on the stave, and whatever line it's on is middle C. So that's how you can always, when you see one of those clefs, you can always figure out, it always tells you where middle C is, so you can work it out from there. So it's a D. The note in question is a D. And it is the C before it. You can see the D with the sign over it. And Bach says it's over the ascending second. So it's the D that's an ascending second. I mean, that's undeniable. And it is the C before it that makes that D an ascending second. Bear and Ryder would have to say, by the way, if their logic was to remain consistent, they would have to say the ascending second is the C. You can see that they'd have to say that. If they say the G in that figure 47 is the descending second, because the F, they obviously think that it's the F that makes the G a descending second, they'd have to say the C in this example is the ascending second because of the D that comes after the C. So they'd see that the ornament is not over the C, it's over the D. So what would they say to that? Of course, they never have to face that. Not in the cage, not in Lilliput. They never have to face that. To the next example Bach provides in that appendix, he says, bei dem ersten Exempel kann diese Manier vor einer Schleifung und vor einer fallenden Sekunde vorkommen, weil gestoßene Noten vorhergehen. A. So one can see the ornament over the C coming in before the slur. Or one can imagine this ornament coming in before the slur. And even if Bernreiter might want to convince you that Bach is talking about the C again and calling that the falling second, which they should be trying to do since, if their logic was to remain consistent, Bach is calling the B the falling second, which the ornament as well comes before. And he's pointing that out because, he said that the brace inclines upwards. Or like with the trill with the afterstroke inclines upwards. So he says that the ornament can come before a falling second, meaning it's attached to the note before the falling second, and not that it's coming before the falling second like the pral trill is coming before the falling second. That would have been one where, because they'll pick and choose as they like to consuit themselves. Many people who are trying to push something that isn't the truth, that isn't correct, they'll try and manipulate. They'll be stuck for examples, and each one they'll have to twist and put a spin on it that makes it fit. And they have to try and they'll be always hoping that you don't spot the contradictions that show up, that they are trying to push their fabrications on you. And if you don't have an agenda, if you're like me, only interested in the correct answer, it's a good way to find out if your answer is correct. Because I remember in the year 2000, I was saying that I figured it all out. I think I've cracked it. I think I've figured it out, how to play the piano, how to get the virtuosity. And none of what I had discovered then still exists today. So I'm not, it didn't matter that I had come up with it or had those ideas. They didn't provide the correct answer, so they're all gone. So it's a good way, if you're like that and you're only interested in the correct answer, you'll know you have the correct answer when the proof starts cropping up everywhere. When there's nothing to back it up, you'll be searching far and wide, and those little scraps you do find, you're going to have to twist and present in a certain light that makes it look like it supports your answer. But there'll always be things like practically shouting at you that it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, and you'll have to ignore them all, and you'll have to run, and that's what makes these people the way they are. So Bärenreiter cites this paragraph 28 as proof of the justification of them being in a position where, after giving Bach a little pat on the head, they can correct him, just to show how much greater they are than him. Because Bärenreiter know nothing about accuracy or precision, they don't realise that the pralltrill and the glancing brace are not the same thing. So that example, to support their argument, falls flat. Bach, as I have shown, used the words before and after perfectly, in a way that sheds insight into the two ornaments. They cited the next paragraph 34, to which, incidentally, that appendix belonged, which also talks about the prall and the Doppelschlag. I'll point it out when we get to it. So that too falls flat. So to support their assertion about the pralltrill, Bärenreiter cite two examples that reference the prall and the Doppelschlag, whereby the last paragraph they cite does reference the pralltrill, and that's paragraph 14 from the chapter on Mordens. Bei dieser Gelegenheit kann man anmerken, dass der Mordent und der Pralltriller zwei entgegengesetzte Manieren sind. Der letzte kann nur auf eine Art, nämlich bei einer fallenden Sekunde angebracht werden, wo gar niemals ein Mordent statt hat. Das Einzige haben sie miteinander gemein, dass sie beiderseits in die Sekunde hineinschleifen, der Mordent im Hinaufsteigen und der Pralltriller im Heruntergehen. Bei Figur 78 sehen wir diesen Fall deutlich vorgestellt. With a falling second. By means with or at. In figure 78, one can see that the pralltrill is with the second note, that's G, and not with the first note, which is an A flat. How someone can think but Bach saying with the falling second in the one instance proves that he should have said after the falling second in the next is beyond me. Bärenreiter, in that case, should at least have recommended that the word before, for, as it appears in paragraph 34 from the chapter on trills, be changed to the word with, by, and not be changed to the word after. Now, if they were able to comprehend what it is they're looking at, which I don't think they are, I don't think they possess reading comprehension skills, and they're native German speakers. Both ornaments in figure 78 slide into the second, according to Bach, which would fit, since Bach says in paragraph 34 from the chapter on trills, Dieser Pralltriller kann nicht anders als vor einer fallenden Sekunde vorkommen. So the fallende Sekunde will follow the pralltrill. So it makes sense that the pralltrill slides into the second, which is the G, because it comes before the second and not after it. Pralltrills can't slide into notes that come before them. That would mean travelling through time backwards, and that can't be done. Even when you're time traveling into the past, the time traveler is moving forward in time. That moment in the past lies ahead of him, and every moment in that past will be ahead of him. And the trip back to the present lies ahead of him. So he's always traveling forwards through time. But Bärenreiter seemed to think you can slide into a note that's already in the past. You should ask them to demonstrate. In figure 78, one can see or imagine the pral trill sliding into the G, the falling second, the note before which the pral trill comes, the note to which the last note of the pral trill is tied, and that it's doing that in descent. And then the mordant in ascent sliding into the E flat, the ascending second, after coming before it. The last note of each ornament is the note to which the respective ornament is attached. How Bärenreiter thinks this paragraph and the other two referencing the prallende Doppelschlag supports their assertion that before should be changed to after, like I said, is beyond me. Bärenreiter wants to suggest that because Bach says this compound ornament comes after a falling second, that the previous before of paragraph 34 relating to the pral trill should be changed into after too. Can anyone see a difference in this compound ornament and the pral trill alone? Far from supporting or proving their claim, the examples they cite actually serve to show how correct and consistent Bach was. They debunk or disprove their own claim with the examples they cite. They expose themselves. In paragraph 27, Bach doesn't call it a prallende Doppelschlag. He only refers to it as a zusammengesetzte Manier. In the second sentence of paragraph 28, he goes back to referring to it as a zusammengesetzte Manier. So when he says prallende Doppelschlag, is he maybe relating specifically to the brace part of the compound ornament? The descending second is the G in figure 63. The brace part of the compound ornament comes in after the G. Bach dissected this same example in paragraph 27. Why would he not continue to dissect it in paragraph 28? By incorrectly identifying the descending second, by not believing Bach capable of accurately communicating what he wants to say, Bärenreiter miss out and deny you the genius of what Bach says. When he says nach, one has to ask oneself, why is he saying nach? So many mistakes occur from this arrogance and assumption, the one-size-fits-all mentality. And perhaps Bärenreiter deliberately changed the signs in figure 65 with the star, thinking again that Bach made a mistake. You know, they'll think the ones before it had the sign for the compound ornament, and this only has a pral trill sign. Oh, Bach obviously forgot and So they improved Bach again in the notation that Bach almost got practically perfect. That's as well many of the mistakes that G. Henley Verlag make, and editors, they see, the one size fits all, because it was done there, it has to be done there, and they don't understand that they're two separate situations, and they don't understand the factors present in each situation because they're in the cage where nothing exists in the cage. So for them it's the same. If you do it once, you should be doing it all the time. And so what they do is they immediately, they don't never think maybe we get it wrong, maybe we're the idiots. No, they think Bach is the idiot. Can somebody please tell me what Bach would have to do to convince these people that he might not be an idiot? Or Beethoven or Mozart, what do they have to do to convince the people that they're not the ones who have gotten it wrong? And these people, Bärenreiter, Henley Verlag, all these, the Roll of Honor people, they have no conception of how impossible it is for them to get it wrong. They have no conception what it's like to operate at that level. So that's why they're so quick to assume they've got it wrong. They don't think, hold on, maybe we don't understand it. So what do? They eradicate the genius. And it's lucky that they're not allowed to destroy the manuscripts after they look at them, because I wouldn't put it past them to be inclined to do that. Not out of, any sinister motives, but just out of mindlessness. That they'd go, oh, we're finished with that. Chuck it in the bin. Put it through the shredder. Take up less space in the bin. I wouldn't be surprised. That's the level they're at. Yeah, so could be Bärenreiter saw that, deliberately thought, we'll help Bach out. We'll be big though this time. We won't mention it in our introduction that we did that. The brace is coming after the descending second. In figure 64, the descending second is the F. The E following the F is another descending second, by the way. The G isn't. But if one imagines the execution of the compound ornament, one will understand the brace part of the compound ornament, the glancing brace, as Bach calls a brace in this context, as well comes after the F. So that was mediocrity attacking and eradicating genius. And that mediocrity belongs to the top level of the Roll of Honor. Lilliput is small. Your giants, Lilliput's giants, are midgets, they're ants, they're gnomes, they're metronomes. I'll go on. So, because this compound ornament contains more notes than the individual ornaments of which it's made up of, it also fills out the value of a somewhat long note better. So in this context, the compound ornament is more preferably used than the pral trill alone. We can see that the notes in figure 65 are somewhat long, and that the glancing brace comes after an appoggiatura and without an appoggiatura. In the first, the glancing brace is followed by an ascending second. In the third, it's followed by a descending or falling second. Then there's an upward leaping third in the second example. Notice how he doesn't include a downward leaping continuation. I'm not drawing any conclusions from that observation, I'm just making it. Bach is also, like I already mentioned, pointing out the difference in the situations for the prall trill and the glancing brace that are fundamentally the same. The length of the note makes the difference. And then with figure 65 with the asterisks, he shows where the prall trill works better. Allegretto and even faster speeds shorten the length of the B and the C over which the trill sign has been placed. Only in box notation. In paragraph 19, from the chapter on ornaments in general, Bach says, Alle Manieren erfordern eine proportionierte Verhältnis mit der Geltung der Note, mit der Zeitmaße und mit dem Inhalt des Stückes. Man merke bei denen Fällen besonders, wo unterschiedliche Arten von Manieren statthaben und wo man wegen des Effekts nicht zu sehr eingeschränkt ist, dass je mehr Noten eine Manier enthält, desto langsamer die Note sein muss, wobei sie angebracht werden soll. Es entstehe übrigens diese Langsamkeit aus der Geltung der Note oder aus der Zeitmaße des Stückes. While relating to and reinforcing what is being said in paragraph 28, this also supports what I've said in previous videos, like when discussing that ornament at the start of K330, Mozart's sonata, or not Mozart's, that sonata in K330 that Mozart didn't compose. Almost slipped up there. Finally, Bach says that one can generally note that the simple as well as the glancing brace rarely do well in those places where a trill without an afterstroke happens. So that's the last thing he mentions in that paragraph. Firstly, I think now that Bach has finished examining the compound ornament up close, that for convenience he'll be generally referring to it as the prallende Doppelschlag. Although still not always, you'll see that he still doesn't always refer to it as a prallende Doppelschlag. But perhaps he felt like he can safely do so because he has given us the chance to be able to understand it properly by giving it the time it needed. And us will be those of us for whom music is a goal. To go with Bach's final observation of this paragraph, I thought I'd read again what he said about the trill without an afterstroke for convenience. So, and this was paragraph 16 from the chapter on trills. Die Triller ohne Nachschlag lieben eine heruntergehende Folge, Figur 28a, und kommen überhaupt über kurze Noten vor, B. Wenn viele Triller hintereinander gehen, C. Wenn eine oder mehrere kurze Noten drauf folgen, welche die Stelle des Nachschlags vertreten können, D. So bleibt der letztere auch weg. In diesem Falle muss die Zeitmaß bei dem mit Stern markierten Exempel nicht die langsamste sein. Die Triolen verschont man ebenfalls mit dem Nachschlage E. Bei der letzten bleibt allezeit weg. Bei der ersten dreien hingegen kann allenfalls nur allein bei sehr langsamem Tempo angebracht werden. And then he goes on to talk about the trill without the Doppelschlag in the next paragraph, in paragraph 17. Ein mittelmäßig Ohr wird allezeit empfinden, wo der Doppelschlag gemacht werden kann oder nicht. Okay, I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll pick up where I left off in the next video. Thanks. Bye.